You believe your world is unshakable, a sturdy home, a family, a routine that feels comfortable even amidst chaos. But everything shatters with a single sentence, spoken almost carelessly, with a cold smile on her lips. It's not just betrayal, it's laughter in the face of your principles, your love, your devotion. What does it feel like to hear words that scorch everything alive inside you, leaving only ashes and cold fury? What does it feel like to realize that the person you trusted until your last breath is willing to crush everything you built over the years for a fleeting thrill? And what will you do when the door to hell swings open before you, pushed by her hand without warning? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. People often say that trust is the cornerstone of marriage. For nearly a decade, I lived by that principle, pouring all of myself into my relationship with Lena, my wife, the mother of my children, the person I thought would stand beside me for life. Now, I'm left staring at the ruins of something I believed was unbreakable. The unraveling of our relationship didn't start with fights or outright deception. No, it began with a seemingly ordinary conversation, one that spiraled into chaos I never anticipated. One night, lying beside each other in bed, Lena turned to me with that familiar look, a mixture of nervous energy and firm intent. I immediately knew something was off. "Travis," she said slowly, her voice uncertain. "Martin and Julia invited us to something this weekend." I didn't look away from my phone. "Oh yeah? What kind of something?" I asked absently. There was a pause. She seemed to be summoning courage before she continued. "It's not your typical party," she said carefully. That got my attention. I looked over, a feeling of unease creeping in. "What does that mean?" I asked, bracing myself. "It's a swingers party." At first I laughed, assuming it was a joke, but her expression didn't change. "You're kidding," I said, sitting up straighter. "You're not serious." "I am," she replied, her voice more confident now. "We've been stuck in a routine, Travis. This could be something new, something exciting." I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around what she was suggesting. "Lena, do you hear yourself? You're talking about sleeping with other people." "It's not a big deal," she argued, folding her arms across her chest. "It's just supposed to be fun. Martin and Julia said it actually made their marriage stronger." "I don't care what it did for them," I snapped, my voice tight with disbelief. "That's not something I want any part of. End of story." But it wasn't the end. Not even close. Over the next several days, she kept bringing it up, slipping it into conversations when I least expected it. Whether I was loading the dishwasher or scrolling through my phone, she found moments to press the issue. "Just one night," she kept saying. "That's all I'm asking. Just try it." Her persistence didn't fade, it only intensified. By Thursday, she didn't bother trying to convince me anymore. As I was tucking our daughter Eliza into bed, she made her stance crystal clear. "I'm going," she said flatly. I followed her out to the living room, shutting the door behind me. "You're actually going?" I asked, my voice strained. "What about the kids?" "We'll get a sitter," she replied without emotion. "It's not a big deal." "It's a huge deal," I shot back. "Do you honestly think this will help our marriage?" "I do," she said, her words sharp. "You're always so rigid, Travis. Maybe if you loosened up, you'd see that this could be good for us." "Good for us?" I said, my voice rising. "You think me standing by while you sleep with someone else is going to fix things?" She rolled her eyes, the disdain in her gaze unmistakable. "You're being ridiculous." Anger welled up inside me, mixing with hurt in a way I'd never felt before. I looked her in the eyes and finally said what I'd been trying to avoid. "I'm not going. And if you do this, if you walk out that door, we're done. I'll file for divorce." Her eyes widened, but instead of backing down, she straightened her posture, doubling down. You'd end our marriage over one night? Seriously? No, I replied coldly. You're the one ending it by even suggesting this. She shook her head, clearly frustrated, and left the room. The silence that followed was suffocating. Divorce, a word that once felt distant and abstract, now hung in the air, thick and real. There was no coming back. The woman standing across from me wasn't the same person I had vowed to spend my life with. I didn't even recognize her anymore. Then, almost as if she sensed the storm inside me, her tone changed. There was a cruel edge to her voice now, taunting. "Oh, lighten up, Travis," she said with a smirk. "If you're that bothered, I'll record it for you. Maybe then you'll see it's not such a big deal." Her words struck like a blow. "You'd actually do that?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. She shrugged like it meant nothing. "Why not? You could even watch it. Who knows? Maybe you'll get into it." I stared at her, stunned, speechless. What kind of person says something like that? And yet, beneath the raw emotion, something shifted in my mind. A calculated thought began to take form. Maybe I could use this. If she really went through with it and recorded herself, it would be irrefutable proof of betrayal. No more arguments, no more gray areas. The evidence would be damning. The courts would have no choice. She'd lose everything. Custody, the house, all of it. I took a steadying breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I couldn't let her see what I was thinking. Not yet. "Fine," I said at last, masking my true feelings. "If that's what you want, go ahead." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering. "Just like that? No more shouting? No more threats?" I gave a casual shrug. "Maybe I'm just tired of fighting." She didn't say another word after that. But even though the conversation was over, the battle between us had only just begun. "If it really matters that much to you, then fine. Do what you feel you have to." That was all I could bring myself to say as I stood there, watching her. Her eyes met mine, steady, unreadable, before she gave a slow, deliberate nod. "All right. I'm going," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't need to worry about me, Travis. I know how to have a good time on my own." I didn't respond. There wasn't anything left to say. Without another word, she turned and walked out. The door shut with a soft but final click, and an eerie stillness settled over the room. That night, as I lay in bed, her words looped endlessly in my mind. Record the whole thing. I couldn't make sense of it. Not just that she was willing to be with someone else, but how casually she tossed the idea around, as if filming it made it somehow trivial. A joke. It wasn't just infidelity. It was audacious, cruel, unfeeling. If Lena was ready to cast aside everything we built for a night of reckless pleasure, then I was determined to ensure she carried the full weight of that decision. When the evening finally came, she looked stunning, dressed not like a wife going out for air, but like a woman headed to a date. Her black dress clung to her like it had been waiting for this exact moment. She slipped on heels I hadn't seen in ages and barely glanced my way as she reached for her purse. "I won't be back early," she said, voice light as a feather. "Don't forget your camera," I muttered, bitterness laced through the words like poison. She shot me a frigid glance but didn't dignify it with a response. And then she was gone. The second the door closed, I moved. I called my mom, and without giving her the full picture, asked if she could take Eliza and Brandon for the weekend. She didn't ask many questions. Within the hour, I'd packed their bags and dropped them off. Back at the house, I poured myself a strong drink and sank into the silence. My mind kept spinning, replaying the hours ahead of me, trying to prepare for what was coming. Anger and grief twisted inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wouldn't last forever. Tomorrow, I'd have what I needed. And then, I'd start cutting her out of my life. Lena came home just after 10 the next morning. Her hair was a mess, makeup smudged beyond recognition, her dress wrinkled like it had been slept in. Yet she walked into the kitchen with a self-satisfied smirk, like nothing had happened at all. "So," she said, arching one eyebrow. I stared at her, my face unreadable. "So what?" She let out a short laugh, then pulled her phone from her bag like a magician revealing a trick. "I told you I'd film it," she said, holding it up like some kind of prize. "There. Now you can stop acting like it's a big deal. It didn't mean anything." Her indifference hit me harder than any confession ever could. I didn't trust myself to speak. I simply reached out, took the phone, and turned toward the stairs. "Wait. Where are Eliza and Brandon?" she asked suddenly, scanning the empty house. "They're with my mom," I said without turning. "Figured it was best they didn't see you come back like this." Her mouth opened as if to protest, but she caught herself and rolled her eyes instead. "Seriously, Travis? You're being dramatic. They wouldn't have even noticed." I didn't reply. I just kept walking. Upstairs, I clenched my jaw until my teeth hurt. In the quiet of our bedroom, I plugged her phone into my laptop and began copying the files. My hands trembled. Some small, desperate part of me still hoped it was all a bluff. But the moment the first video started loading, I knew it wasn't. Every clip was a blow to the chest. The way she laughed, the way she touched him, the casual dismissal of everything we'd built. It was all there, right in front of me. Every second tore another thread from the fabric of our life together. By the last video, I felt completely hollow. This wasn't just betrayal. It was contempt. A mockery of our marriage, our promises, and the family we had built. And yet, in that emptiness, something settled. A sense of clarity. There was no going back. I saved every file to a secure drive, triple-checked everything, then pulled myself together and went downstairs. I handed the phone back to her. She was lounging on the couch, scrolling through something, and took it from me with a smug smile, clearly mistaking my silence for surrender. "I hope it was worth it," I said, voice low and steady. Her smile faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You'll understand soon enough," I replied, turning away before she could say another word. I walked into the kitchen, poured another drink, and sat down at the table. My eyes locked on the wall ahead, already picturing the next steps. I knew exactly what I had to do. Tomorrow, I'd contact a lawyer. And I did. By the end of the week, I had consulted an attorney, mapped out my legal strategy, and filed the divorce papers. The footage Lena had so flippantly handed me became a powerful tool, one that gave me the leverage I needed for full custody and a clean financial break. But Lena, in true fashion, still didn't get it. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," she scoffed when I served her the papers. "This is just a heat-of-the-moment thing." But it wasn't impulsive. It was the outcome of every careless decision she'd made. And for once, she was going to deal with the consequences. "You're just being emotional." "No, Lena," I said, my tone steady, firm. "This is what it looks like when I've finally had enough." The kids were already staying at my mother's, so I packed a few necessities and joined them. I needed out, away from Lena, away from the mess. My mom's place became the only safe harbor, a quiet space where the kids and I could finally breathe. In the days that followed, it became painfully clear. Lena wasn't ready to face the fallout of her choices. Her mask of confidence began to crumble. The phone calls started, odd hours, trembling voice, pleading with me to give her another chance. Then one evening, she showed up at my mother's front porch, desperate to see our children. "Travis, I didn't mean for this to happen," she cried, her face soaked with tears. "I thought I was fixing things, not breaking them." "You shattered everything the moment you walked out," I told her, blocking the entrance. "You need to leave." The divorce process was just as draining as I had imagined, but everything shifted once the video evidence came to light. Lena's lawyer tried to paint the swinger party as a mutual agreement, something consensual between the two of us, but my attorney dismantled that lie in minutes. The judge didn't hesitate. Custody of Eliza and Brandon was awarded to me. Lena left with far less than she'd expected. I moved into a small apartment. Not much, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter. Lena remained in our old house, but the place had lost all meaning. It wasn't a home anymore, just the hollow shell of something that used to be real. Months later, I ran into Martin, the neighbor who'd hosted that infamous night, while grabbing groceries. He was visibly uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as we exchanged stiff small talk. Then, after a pause, he finally spoke. "Listen," he began, shifting awkwardly. "I didn't think Lena would take things that far." My eyes narrowed. "What are you trying to say?" He hesitated, then sighed. "It wasn't just one guy. There were three." His words hit like a punch to the stomach. "Three?" I asked, barely able to get the word out. He nodded, almost apologetically. "I figured you had a right to know. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. I just walked away, my mind racing. I thought I already understood the extent of her betrayal, but that truth cut deeper than I expected. Looking back, I'm thankful I found out before losing more of my life to something so broken. Starting fresh wasn't simple, but I did it. For me and for the kids. As for Lena, from what I've heard, she's still in the same neighborhood. Only now, everything's different. The friends she once relied on are gone. Her reputation, what little remained, has vanished. Turns out, sleeping with half the party doesn't win you much loyalty. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you? Imagine that one day the familiar world begins to fray at the edges. It doesn't explode, doesn't shatter all at once, just quietly crumbles like sand slipping through your fingers. You look at the person beside you and see everything except who they once were, as if your reflection no longer exists in their gaze. One evening, one word, one detail, and suddenly your reality is no longer yours. It's not the kind of pain that screams and tears you apart, but something deeper, heavy, like a stone you can't cast away. What do you do when the truth becomes sharper than a blade? When every gesture and word is a reminder of betrayal? When you look into the eyes of someone you trusted and see only a stranger? Sometimes the answer doesn't come right away. Sometimes it stretches through the night, seeps into the silence, fills the emptiness. Sometimes you have to fall apart to find your way back to yourself. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now let's get started. You rarely notice the precise moment when your world begins to slip away. It's not a sudden break, more like the quiet unraveling of a thread, pulling loose at the seams. One day everything feels familiar, solid. Then suddenly, it doesn't. For me, the shift began on a Friday evening. Delilah told me she was going out to meet her friends from college. "Just a girls' night," she said with a casual smile, kissing my cheek on her way out. "Don't wait up." But of course I did. I always did. Midnight came and went, then 1 o'clock. I kept glancing at the clock, trying to seem relaxed. By 2, my phone felt like an extension of my hand. I told myself not to worry. I lied. Something wasn't right. At 2:30 a.m., the front door finally creaked open. I was already in the hallway, arms crossed, trying to keep my face neutral. And then I saw her. Delilah looked wrecked. Her hair was a mess. Streaks of mascara lined her cheeks. One of her heels dangled from her fingers. The strap of her dress had slipped off her shoulder. Her eyes avoided mine, glazed, distant. "You all right?" I asked, my voice low. She nodded a little too quickly. "Just tired?" she mumbled. "Can we talk tomorrow?" 100 questions surged to my lips. Where had she been? Who was she with? But I bit them back. I helped her up the stairs instead. When I leaned in to steady her, a strange scent of unfamiliar cologne drifted past me. Something inside me gave way. Still, I stayed quiet. For now. I helped her out of her clothes and pulled the blanket over her. She murmured something as she settled in. Faint, slurred, incomprehensible. She told me it meant nothing. I froze. "What was that?" I asked. But she was already drifting into a heavy, intoxicated sleep. I stood over her for a long time, staring at the woman I once knew, wondering when she'd become a stranger. Morning arrived, spilling light across the kitchen. I hadn't slept. My coffee sat untouched, gone cold hours ago. My thoughts looped around the same phrase from the night before. It didn't mean anything. What didn't? A moment? A lapse in judgment? A betrayal? The weight of it gnawed at me. At exactly 8:13 a.m., I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Delilah emerged, eyes bloodshot, hair tousled, one hand pressed to her temple. She looked unsure, bracing for silence or fury. "Hey," she said softly. I didn't speak, just pointed to the table. Her shoes sat there, scuffed and dirtied, next to the necklace she'd worn. It was broken. One of the beads had split clean in two. I'd found it crushed in her bag, like it had been stepped on or yanked off. She followed my gaze. Her expression shifted. Color drained from her face, then rushed back in. "Luke, I can explain," she began. "I know how it must look." "Do you remember what you said last night?" I cut in. My tone was even, but I felt frozen from the inside out. She blinked, tried to recall. Then she sank into a chair and covered her face with her hands. We went downtown, me, Tabitha, and the usual crew. I drank too much. Honestly, I don't even remember how I got home. Tabitha said I fell near the Uber, she added. Dropped my purse, probably when the necklace broke. I let her talk. "What about the dress?" I asked. She hesitated, her voice faltering. I don't know. Maybe it ripped when I fell, or someone grabbed me by mistake in the crowd. It was packed. You know how it is when people drink too much." Her words tumbled out quickly, like she was racing to fill every gap before I could widen them. But her eyes never quite met mine. Her hands wouldn't stop moving. She was giving me a version of the night, but I couldn't tell if it was the real one. I didn't push. Not yet. Part of me still clung to the hope that I was wrong, that I was seeing patterns where none existed, that the worst-case scenario was still just a thought, not a truth. But deep down, I felt it. This was only the beginning. The days that followed blurred together. Delilah carried on like everything was fine, like nothing had happened that night. But I hadn't forgotten. Her excuses felt flimsy, the shattered necklace, the torn strap, the vagueness. I said nothing. I waited. Then came Thursday. I got home earlier than usual. My last meeting had been called off. Delilah had mentioned she'd be out running errands, and I thought maybe we'd spend some time together. Grab a bite, catch up, something simple, something steady. But when I pulled into the driveway, her car was already parked. I unlocked the door and stepped into silence, the kind that felt heavy, deliberate. Then I heard soft footsteps above. Laughter followed, light, carefree. Her voice floated down like nothing was broken. I moved toward the stairs, quiet and slow. At the top, I stopped short of the landing. Delilah was in our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. "Oh my God, Aria, it was insane," she said, laughing without the slightest trace of guilt. Her tone was airy, almost flippant, like nothing that happened could possibly weigh on her. I didn't mean for it to go that way, honestly, but a few drinks in, and it just unfolded. She paused for a beat, her voice dipping, shaded with something dangerous, something exhilarating. "I wasn't expecting him to be that good," she continued, her words thick with memory. "It was like he wasn't even human. The way he took charge, the way he moved, it was unreal. He just knew exactly what to do, And when? My jaw clenched so tight I heard a faint crack in my neck. She kept going, oblivious, like she was casually reading off a to-do list. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, she said, matter of fact. Just something I needed. Honestly, I've been feeling nothing. For a while. Luke's great, she added, almost as if she felt obligated to say it. He really is, but it's like I'm invisible to him now. Anthony sees me, really sees me. And there it was, his name finally out in the open. Anthony. She gave a soft, dreamy laugh. I already told him I'm coming back tomorrow. Same hotel, same room, same time. Her voice practically hummed with anticipation. And there's no way I'm missing it. There wasn't even a flicker of remorse, no hesitation. She didn't sound like someone wrestling with a decision. She sounded like someone booking a weekend getaway or talking about a concert she'd waited months to attend. I stood frozen, hands gripping the railing until my knuckles turned white, heart pounding, every word a fresh blow to the chest. My ears started to ring. For a second, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay on my feet. I should have barged in. I should have made her say it to my face instead of whispering it like some giddy confession to her best friend. But I didn't. I turned around and walked back down the stairs. Each step dragged heavier than the one before, because now I knew. And that knowing, the certainty, cut deeper than any fight ever could. This wasn't some accident she regretted. This was a choice, a deliberate path she was continuing to walk. She wasn't tormented, she was glowing. And as I stood at the bottom of the stairs, something inside me hardened. No yelling, no begging for honesty. I would gather every last piece of truth she'd hidden, and I would let it bury her. That night, after she went to bed, I did something I never thought I would. I picked up her phone. She hadn't even changed the passcode. Maybe she thought I didn't have it in me to look. The first thing I saw was a thread labeled A. Anthony. My stomach dropped. I tapped it open. Dozens of messages. They weren't graphic. She was smarter than that. But the meaning was obvious. You looked incredible that night, he'd written. I haven't stopped thinking about you. And her reply? I've been counting the hours. I need tomorrow to come faster. I leaned back, staring at the screen, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. I had to know who this guy really was. His full name was right there in her contacts. A quick search told me everything. Social media painted the rest of the picture. Anthony was married. His wife's name was Ellie. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. His page looked like something out of a Hallmark ad. Birthday parties, fishing trips, Halloween costumes. He looked like a man who had it all. And just like Delilah, he was throwing it away behind closed doors. The next evening, she got dressed like she was preparing for something sacred, because to her, that's exactly what it was. I watched from the kitchen as she stood in the hallway mirror, painting on lipstick like war paint. That red blouse? She hadn't worn it in over a year. It clung to her, low-cut and unforgettable. That shirt was for being seen. Her heels echoed with sharp confidence as she crossed the floor. She picked up her purse and tossed out a casual, heading out, without even looking at me. Where you going? I asked, voice flat as ice. Girls' night, Tabitha's birthday. The lie rolled off her tongue like she'd practiced it. I nodded slowly. Let the silence stretch. Let her wonder what I was thinking. Tell her I said happy birthday. She smiled, tight, rehearsed, and walked out like nothing was wrong. I gave it 2 minutes. Then I grabbed my keys and followed. Her taillights slipped into the traffic, and I kept my distance. No sudden moves, no headlights too close. Just the quiet shadow of someone who sees everything. She drove into the city and parked behind a nondescript bar, the kind of place people choose when they don't want to be found. I waited from across the street, engine off. 10 minutes passed. Then a sleek car pulled up. He stepped out like he'd walked off the cover of a magazine. Every detail perfect. His coat, his hair, his posture. He glanced at his phone, checked his surroundings, and leaned against his car like he owned the night. Then she appeared, Delilah, coming down the sidewalk like it was a scene written just for her. She didn't look around, didn't hesitate, just walked right up to him. And there, in the open, they kissed, like they had every right to. Her arms wrapped around his neck, his hands firm on her waist. No hesitation, no shame. She laughed, carefree and light, as he whispered something in her ear. And her smile, it was the smile of a girl who'd just climbed out her bedroom window and gotten away with it. I lifted my phone and started snapping pictures. One caught their kiss, another froze them mid-embrace. The last showed her staring up at him like he'd just solved every question she'd been carrying. My gut twisted, sick, empty, cold. I kept watching just long enough to see them disappear inside together, moving like they'd done this 100 times before, like they belonged in sync. I didn't follow. I stayed behind the wheel, knuckles white against the steering wheel, jaw locked tight. Part of me burned to march in there, grab him by the collar, and drag him out under the weight of their lie, force her to explain herself in front of strangers. But what would that do? What was I even trying to salvage? A marriage held together by silence and half-truths. A woman who didn't bother to hide the fact that she'd chosen someone else? No, that wasn't strength. That was desperation pretending to be dignity. And I wasn't going to plead for someone who'd already let go long before I knew to hold on tighter. So I drove home. Alone. But I had the evidence. That night, I called a locksmith. Told him I needed the locks changed. No waiting. He came a little after 10, finished quickly. By 11:42, the new locks were in place. I heard the doorknob turn. Once. Twice. Soft at first, the handle jiggling, a low rattle, then a knock, then a second, louder one. I stayed still. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Her name lit up, Delilah. I let it go dark. She tried again, then again. I let them all ring unanswered. The knocking escalated to pounding. Her fists slammed the door, sharp and desperate. "Luke!" she screamed. "What the hell is this? Open the damn door!" I waited, just long enough for panic to set in. Then I opened it. She looked like the aftermath of a storm. Mascara smeared, hair undone, one shoe in her hand, the other probably lost somewhere between guilt and panic. Her expression flickered between confusion and fury. "What is going on?" she snapped. "Why won't my key work?" I changed the locks. "You did what?" "If you're going to lie to my face without flinching, you don't get to have keys to my home." She froze. "Luke." I pulled out my phone and opened the gallery. Swiped through the photos, her with Anthony, holding hands, locked in a kiss, laughing like I never existed. Her face collapsed in on itself. "So where do we start?" I asked. "The lies? The cheating? Or how you looked me in the eye and told me you were out with the girls?" She didn't say a word, just stared at the screen. "You're finished here," I said, voice flat. "Tomorrow I'm filing for divorce. Your things will be packed and sent to your parents' house." "Luke, wait. Please, it's not what you think. No, it's exactly what it looks like. And you made that choice. Now leave." She didn't fight. Just turned away, wiping at her face, stumbling back toward her car. She never came back. The next morning, I sat across from a lawyer, laid everything out, and got the process started. That same afternoon, I sent the photos to Anthony's wife, Ellie. She replied in less than an hour, "Thank you for telling me." 2 days later, word came through that Ellie had kicked Anthony out and filed for divorce herself. Delilah tried reaching out. A handful of calls. Long texts filled with excuses, confessions, pleas. I ignored them all. There was nothing left to say. The divorce went through fast. No children, nothing to split. 6 months later, it was over. I heard Delilah had moved in with her sister. Some mutual friends said she tried to get back in touch with Anthony, but he'd shut her out. Maybe his world fell apart harder than hers. Or maybe, finally, he saw her for who she really was. I didn't care either way. I was free. At first, the quiet was sharp. The house didn't feel peaceful. It felt abandoned. But that passed. I started working out again, took a solo trip to the mountains, surrounded myself with real people, the kind who speak plainly, love honestly. I laughed again, slept through the night without waking in anger. I wasn't searching for someone else. I was rediscovering the man I used to be. And I found him. Delilah lost a man who would have gone to war for her. I lost someone who was never truly mine. But I found myself, and in the end, that was everything. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Falling in love with an illusion is like building a house out of smoke. You invest, nurture the dream, feel the warmth, but the moment reality blows through, it all vanishes. Rick was used to order, to stability. His life was like a perfectly calibrated security system, simple, reliable, predictable. Until she stormed into his world, bold, fiery, crafted from flames and words. They seemed like perfect opposites, whose collision created something beautiful, or so he thought. Betrayal rarely arrives in dark alleys. More often, it waits in your own living room, disguised as love. And when the truth shoots through you like a cold-blooded sniper, there's only one choice: keep drowning in the lie or drown it yourself. Today, Rick chose the latter, and his silence is about to speak louder than any vows. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now let's get started. They say clarity always comes after the fact. A year back, I was certain I had life dialed in. A solid job, a cozy apartment, and a partner I imagined building a future with. I never anticipated the twist. My name's Rick. I'm 34, raised in a small farming town where my parents made their living off the land. They were the type who let their work speak louder than their words, who believed in rising early and only talking when necessary. That's the mindset I grew up with. I stayed focused, kept my head down, and carved out a life that revolved around order and simplicity. I've been in cybersecurity for a logistics company for several years now. It's not flashy work, but it's steady. It keeps the lights on and gives me peace of mind. I never craved extravagance, just consistency, a little quiet at the end of the day, and someone to share it all with. That someone turned out to be Sable. We crossed paths at a corporate event I had no intention of attending. She was everything I wasn't: bold, charismatic, dressed like a magazine cover come to life. People noticed her the moment she entered a room. She carried herself like she belonged on a stage, yet somehow she noticed me, a guy half hidden in the corner. We started chatting, and surprisingly, it clicked. Before long, we were spending a lot of time together. It began the usual way: dinner dates, drives that stretched past midnight, binge-watching movies. She brought this electricity into my world, and I like to think I gave her a bit of calm in return. Or maybe I just needed to believe that. She made me feel like I didn't have to be anyone else, like I was enough. Looking back, I might have wanted that feeling more than she intended to give it. But in the moment, I didn't second-guess anything. Everything seemed to fall into place quickly. 6 months in, we moved in together. By the time a year passed, I proposed. Sable worked in personal branding, helping clients shape their public image and curate their lifestyles. I never fully grasped what her day-to-day looked like, but she clearly excelled at it. She had this captivating energy, an aura that made people want to listen. She could sell a dream, and for a while, that included our dream. At first, her lively spirit was exhilarating, but gradually it started to wear on me. The little comments began to surface. Harmless at first, but they stuck with me. She'd tease me about my clothes when we went out, saying I looked too plain for someone in tech. She suggested I upgrade my car, implying that driving a Civic gave off the wrong impression. Occasionally, she'd scoff when I talked about my job. One night at dinner, she said, "If you mention firewalls one more time, I'm going to lose my mind." She laughed after, but it hit me harder than I let on. I brushed it off, told myself she was just being candid, that I was reading too much into it. She was confident, blunt, stylish. I figured I was being overly sensitive. When it came time to plan the wedding, she took over. Upscale venue, designer dress, luxury photography, the whole 9 yards. I didn't object. I took on extra work, fixed people's Wi-Fi on weekends, passed up trips. I kept telling myself it was all for her happiness. That's what love's about, isn't it? You stretch, you sacrifice, you show up where they need you. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was the only one doing the reaching. It all unraveled on a Tuesday. Funny how regular days can hold the biggest betrayals. Tuesdays are usually predictable. Routine meetings, inbox cleanups. Nothing unusual. But that particular Tuesday unraveled everything. I had a break between meetings and decided to head home early. Sable had been swamped with wedding stuff, flowers, RSVPs, some disagreement with a vendor I couldn't quite keep up with. I thought I'd do something small to lift her spirits. I picked up her favorite Thai dish on the way home. Didn't text, didn't call. I just wanted to surprise her. Just a quiet gesture to say, "I'm here for you." But the second I stepped inside, something felt off. The apartment was too quiet. No playlist in the background, no TV chatter, not even a podcast. My first guess was she'd fallen asleep. Then I heard her voice, coming from the bedroom. She was on speaker. Her tone was playful, almost flirtatious. I froze halfway down the hall, a sinking feeling urging me to stay put. "He has no clue," she said, laughing. "He's off somewhere playing tech savior for the company." My heart slammed to a stop. I didn't know who she was talking to yet, but her voice said everything. That laugh wasn't the one she used with me. It was sharper, colder. Then came a man's voice, cool, familiar, like they'd had this exchange more than once. His name was Max. "So Thursday's still on?" he asked. "Definitely," she replied. "He's working late. I'll have the whole apartment." I felt the takeout box tilt in my hand. My palms were slick from the condensation, but I stood frozen. My thoughts were a mess, my heart pounding loud enough to drown everything else out. I tried to convince myself it was a joke. Maybe they were acting, teasing about someone else, anything but what it sounded like. But she kept talking. "I mean, I love Rick, sort of. He's reliable, you know." God, he was insufferable. Every time he launched into another monologue about his job, I had to pretend like I cared. Fake smiles, nodding along like I wasn't dying of boredom. Max let out this smug little laugh. Not loud, just a knowing snicker, like this wasn't the first time he'd heard her rant. "What about the wedding?" he asked, eyebrow raised. "Oh, it's still happening," Sable said with a shrug. "You think I'm just gonna eat the cost of that venue? No way. I want the photos. I've been organizing this thing forever." She tossed the words out like she was discussing weekend plans. "I'll deal with the rest later," she added, like it was just logistics. And that did something to me. Broke something, actually. The betrayal, yeah, that crushed me. But what really hit was how casual she sounded. Like none of it carried weight. Like I was irrelevant. It wasn't about us. Not really. It was about ticking boxes. I wasn't her partner, just a placeholder until someone better came along. I didn't burst in, didn't shout or demand explanations. No drama. Just pulled out my phone, hands barely steady, and opened the recorder. Tapped the red button. She kept talking, throwing out flippant remarks. Even joked about maybe inviting Max to the bachelorette party if schedules aligned. Like it was all just entertainment. Like I didn't matter. And then she said something that hit me like a punch to the ribs. "I still think about that last night," she said, grinning. "That hotel suite, the wine, the view, it was perfect. And Rick footed the bill. Then she laughed, loud and careless, like it was an inside joke. I let it go on for a bit longer. My hands were shaking, heart racing. When it was enough, I ended the recording, slid the phone into my pocket, and walked out without a word. The takeout bag was still dangling from my hand when I reached the car. I sat in the driver's seat and just stared ahead. No music, no phone, just silence. Me and the weight of everything I'd just heard. That's when the shift happened. Not in some explosive argument or late-night confrontation. Right there, in that parked car with dinner cooling in my lap, I realized the truth. She never really loved me. To her, I was a convenience, a bank account, a body to stand next to in pictures. I didn't blow up right then. God knows I wanted to. Every time I looked at her, I had to fight the urge to scream. But I knew how it would play out. Tears, excuses, spinning the story until I was the villain. No, I didn't want noise. I wanted clarity, something undeniable. So I waited. The days that followed were brutal. I acted the part. Went to work, came home, kissed her like nothing was wrong. Every "I love you" from her felt like a lie wrapped in sugar. Behind the scenes, I was preparing. Saved the audio in 3 places. Printed out phone records. Cross-referenced her calendar with nights she was working late. It wasn't just Thursdays. Talked to my friend Kyle. He'd gone through hell with his ex. "She doesn't deserve your silence," he told me. "If she made this mess, she should have to sit in it." And that's when the idea sparked. The engagement party, her pride and joy. Chic rooftop venue downtown. Gourmet catering, DJ, professional photographer. All her idea. "It's going to be iconic," she said. "A statement. The start of our forever." That was the caption under one of our posts. I smiled, nodded. Let her run the show. But now, it meant something else entirely. Her people would all be there. Friends, family, colleagues, the ones she was always trying to impress. She thought it was her big moment. I decided it was mine. I arrived late, deliberately. She was already in her element. Black dress hugging every curve, bold red lipstick, wine glass in hand, basking in the attention. I walked in wearing jeans and a plain tee that read, "Trust is earned." She spotted me instantly. Blinked. "Rick, what are you wearing? Are you okay?" I didn't answer. Just made my way to the mic beside the DJ and gave it 2 taps. "Evening, everyone," I said. "Sorry to break up the fun. I just have a quick message about the woman I was going to marry." Sable froze mid-smile, eyes darting around the room. Her mom was mid-toast. "Sable is stunning, smart, driven." I paused. "Very, very driven. And for the last few months, she's also been having an affair with a guy named Max." A wave of gasps swept through the crowd. Murmurs rippled. Glasses clinked in confusion. I raised my phone and hit play. Her voice echoed through the speakers. "I still think about that last night. The hotel, the wine, the view, it was perfect. And Rick paid for all of it." Silence. Someone dropped a fork. Sable rushed toward me, panic written all over her face. "Rick, stop it! What are you doing?" I turned to her, calm, unshaken. "I'm doing what you never could," I said, telling the truth. And then I turned back to the room. There was no ceremony, no ring, and no more facade. I stood in front of everyone, expressed my gratitude for their presence, apologized for the harsh way the truth had unfolded, and then I walked away. Just like that. In the days that followed what was supposed to be our engagement celebration, life felt like standing in the eye of a storm, strangely still, yet surrounded by wreckage. I ignored every one of Sable's calls. She wouldn't let up. Call after call, piling up in my voicemail. Then came the texts. Endless blocks of text filled with rationalizations and flimsy half-apologies. According to her, I'd misunderstood everything. Nothing had happened with Max, she claimed. It was all just talk. She chalked it up to wedding pressure, said she hadn't meant any of it, and insisted she was merely venting. Then came the classic deflection. "I was only joking. Don't you know me better than that?" I refused to reply, not one word. That's when her tone shifted. Her messages became sharp, her voicemails seething with anger, laced with sobs, accusations, venom. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You ruined everything, Rick. You're cruel and spiteful. You could have handled this differently." The speed with which she turned from guilt to fury was dizzying. I cut off all contact, blocked her number, changed the locks on my door, reset every password she might have remembered. I wasn't about to give her a single way back in. The fallout hit her like a freight train. Sable had spent years crafting her image. She was the expert in appearances, the branding queen, the woman with the storybook life, perfect partner, perfect plans. But that illusion collapsed in a heartbeat. Clients started dropping her. Her polished persona cracked. Even her business partner, Rebecca, messaged me out of nowhere. "You did what most people only dream of doing. You exposed who she really is." And then there was her sister, who reached out too. "I always had a feeling," she admitted. "I hate that it happened like this, but I'm not surprised." Those words stuck with me, because in truth, this was never about revenge. It wasn't retaliation. I'd simply reached my limit with pretending. I needed honesty to mean something, even if it made people uncomfortable. For too long, I'd minimized myself, as if I needed to prove I was worthy of standing next to her. But that night, at that party, I reclaimed the dignity I had been slowly handing over. And she was left alone with the mess she'd made. No rebranding, no spin, no carefully worded apology to win sympathy. Just silence. It's been 6 months. Do I miss her? Sometimes. But not her exactly. More like the version of her I once believed in. I loved the picture we painted together. The dream of us, more than the reality of her. I heard she tried to give things a shot with Max after everything fell apart. Didn't last long. Word is, he bailed after a few weeks. Apparently, commitment wasn't really in his wheelhouse. That part didn't catch me off guard. What did surprise me was this. I sleep through the night now. I laugh without holding back. I speak about my work without downplaying it. I pull up in my beat-up old Civic without a second thought. I'm not looking to date. Mostly, I'm focusing on rebuilding trust in myself. And if there's one lesson this whole experience carved into me, it's this: trust the subtle discomfort. Pay attention to those tiny moments that don't sit right. Listen to how someone speaks about you when they think you're not paying attention. Because love, real love, isn't about the picture-perfect moments, the fancy nights out, or the flawless social media feed. It's built on respect, and once that's broken, no amount of effort, apology, or longing can fix what's already gone. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you? Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I was enjoying a bowl of muesli at the kitchen table when a sudden loud knock on the door caught me off guard. Curiosity got the better of me, and I wondered who might come early on Sunday morning. Walking across the tiled floor and opening the door, I found a man in his 40s, dressed in a rumpled, inexpensive suit. 3 uniformed policemen towered behind him, making it clear that this was far from an ordinary Sunday morning. "Mr. Yang?" the man in the suit asked, flashing his badge. "Would you mind if we came in to ask you a few questions?" "I can only talk to one person at a time, Detective. What's your name?" "Robinson. Detective Charlie Robinson. I'm going to ask the questions, Mr. Mitchell. These officers would like to inspect your house if you don't mind," he said. "Do you have a warrant?" I replied. "I've seen enough crime series, and I know that in order to enter my house uninvited, you need a warrant," I said firmly. "Unfortunately, we don't have a warrant," the officer replied. "I ask your permission for these officers to search your house. You have the right to refuse." Then I'll have to get a warrant, the detective conceded. I couldn't remember what I might be hiding, but their intentions were unclear. Maybe there are prohibited materials stored on my laptop. It didn't sound familiar. Maybe a few hidden bodies in the freezer. It seemed unlikely. Well, yes, maybe a few pirated DVDs. You're not from Interpol, are you? I asked impulsively. Not at all, Mr. Yang. Believe me, we are not interested in any pirated films, the detective said, slowly shaking his head. People always seem to worry about it. Could you explain what's going on? I asked politely. It's quite unusual for this area. Why would you search my house? Mister, there's been a murder and I'm investigating it. The officers are helping me. Do you have any reason to refuse my request? Detective Robinson asked. No, I replied. I can. I don't want a crowd of strangers wandering around my house. The floor is clean, and I would like it to stay that way, otherwise my wife will be upset when she wakes up. Is that a good enough reason? Should I take you to the station and hold you there for 5 or 6 hours while my colleagues get a search warrant for your immaculate house? Robinson chuckled. Gentlemen, you can search here while I keep Detective Robinson occupied, I replied to the 3 uniformed officers. Why they wanted to search my house so badly was unclear to me, but I was sure that they would not find anything particularly disturbing. Maybe only those annoying tags that the children tore off the mattresses and carried past the cash register 15 years ago. Well, if the situation gets out of control, Robinson can go to the university and arrest both my sons. At that time, I did not even think to warn them about the illegality of these labels. I motioned Robinson to a chair as 3 uniformed officers entered the kitchen. It seemed to me that they slowed down and stopped at the island in the center of the room, almost in unison looking in my direction. Just one each, I muttered, as a trio of officers attacked my box of fresh donuts. A few minutes before they arrived, I picked up a dozen jelly goodies, and the sweet aroma clearly awakened their instincts. Just at that moment, my wife Vanessa came into the kitchen, moving cautiously, clutching the collar of her robe tightly. What's going on, Oliver? Why the hell are the cops wandering around our house and eating donuts? She asked, concern written all over her face. Has something happened? She added anxiously. Vanessa, this is Detective Robinson. I hope that he will be able to shed light on the situation with his questions. I motioned for them to look around. That's what I called the search that Robinson started. Detective, this is my wife, Vanessa. Explain why you're here. Investigating a murder? Mr. Christopher Turner was shot at around midnight yesterday. I think you both knew him? Yes, you did, I replied. He was Vanessa's boss, and it became clear that Robinson had a long list of potential alleged suspects. Cuckolds from this guy bred faster than rabbits, maybe even an army of jealous husbands, I joked, feeling no remorse about the death of my wife's former employer. No one else seemed to find it funny. Vanessa's expression turned ashen white, and tears glistened in her eyes. Robinson just nodded, his gaze fixed on me. Apart from Vanessa's quiet sobs, there was a heavy tension in the room. Mrs. Yang, how long have you been involved with your employer, Christopher Turner? The detective asked. I didn't have an affair with him, Vanessa replied, her voice trembling. It was more of a passing relationship. I didn't love him or anything like that. We first met about 6 months ago, and I wouldn't hurt anyone, especially Bob. Mrs. Yang, I hadn't thought about it. I'm just trying to piece together all the facts, Robinson said in an indifferent tone. How did your husband react to your affair with Mr. Turner? Was he jealous? Was he angry when he found out about it? Oliver didn't know about my infidelity until that moment, Mr. Robinson. We have never had any conversations on this topic. I have no doubt Oliver would have been upset, but that wouldn't have pushed him to kill Bob, Vanessa replied, although her conviction was less than I would have preferred from my wife. Really? The detective chuckled mockingly. Mr. Yang, tell me, how would you answer the same questions? They began an affair in early August of this year, I replied calmly, just after the Turners' dinner party. Due to problems at work, I was called early. He offered Vanessa a ride home and ended up making love to her in the back seat of his SUV. It doesn't bother me because Vanessa and I have an agreement. In fact, we are free to date whomever we want, and we are dating. Vanessa has decided to be with Turner. It was strictly between the two of them. When I told her about it, Vanessa almost fell to the floor. She took a moment to process the information I had just shared with the detective. I could see her thoughts slowly turning over in her head. "Why have I never heard of this so-called understanding?" Vanessa asked, clearly displeased. "Why didn't I know about this?" "Because that's what behind the scenes means, dear," I replied quickly. "If we were in conversation, I would call it an oral agreement. But if we had drawn it up in writing and notarized it, it would have been a written agreement. Our understanding is just unspoken." "Well, it would be great if I were informed," Vanessa remarked. "I had to put in a lot of effort to keep you in the dark about Bob. In the future, I think we should clearly state all our agreements, or even put them in writing. Such constant confusion is very frustrating." Acknowledging her displeasure, Robinson reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small tape recorder. "I should inform you both that I am writing down everything you say. Mrs. Yang, did you have relationships with other men? Or was Mr. Turner your only partner?" "Of course I was," Vanessa replied, perhaps too categorically. "I am a married woman. How did it even occur to you to ask me about this?" Detective Robinson asked. "Did your husband take advantage of this unspoken agreement, or was he completely devoted to you?" Vanessa replied, a little defensively. "Oliver would never break our marriage vows. He's as loyal as an old dog. You can put it on the record." Then the detective turned to me. "Mr. Yang, I repeat the same questions for you. Do you think you agree with your wife's statements?" I replied, "Vanessa has been with her colleague, Douglas Lewis, since mid-September. Apart from these two aforementioned gentlemen, she is as devoted to me as the geyser named after her in one of our national parks." Vanessa let out a soft sob. The detective remarked, "You seem to be very knowledgeable, Mr. Yang. Even more surprising is your apparent lack of emotion. Most men would react angrily to the idea that their wife has two lovers. But why are you so calm?" I explained. "We have an unspoken agreement. Vanessa talked openly about her adventures, and I preferred to be more restrained, if you get my point." I grinned faintly. Vanessa looked like she was on the verge of a breakdown. Her eyes stopped watering. Instead, they seemed to bulge out of their sockets. Instead of the usual pallor, a bright red color appeared on his face, and his left hand was clutching a jelly donut. The filling oozed through her fingers, splattering her robe, but she seemed completely oblivious to this outrage. "So you're saying that you also had a mistress?" The astonished detective demanded clarification. "And your wife didn't seem to know about it. Who did you have an affair with, and when did it start, Mr. Mitchell?" "You have a very sharp insight. No wonder you became a detective before you turned 50, I said with a grin. I remembered the first time I spent a night with Coraline Turner in mid-August, just 2 days after her husband had an affair with Vanessa in the back seat of his car. From that time on, we managed to be together almost every weekday, and I couldn't help but remember it fondly. This adventurous girl definitely had a passion for intimacy." Taken aback, Vanessa raised her hand to her forehead, inadvertently smearing the jelly she was holding on it. She seemed completely oblivious to this, while Robinson, too courteous to point it out, struggled to form a coherent thought. "My God," he finally said. "Did you have a relationship with the widow of the murder victim? Have you been with Coraline Turner every weekday?" "I even had to flaunt it." Jelly trickled down Vanessa's face, and she sank into a chair, almost fainting. Robinson was swallowing a small pill similar to the nitroglycerin that my Uncle Derek sometimes took for heart problems. Gathering his thoughts, Robinson began to act. "Mr. Yang, you need to understand that you are related to the wives of 2 men who are also related to your wife. There can be no simple coincidence here. I can tell you that I have seen Mrs. Lewis, and she is very beautiful. I'm not going to dictate to you what conclusions you should draw, but I had a relationship with these 2 women right after their husbands were with Vanessa. It's all about revenge sleeping with the wives of your wife's lovers. Passionate revenge is even more satisfying, and I was lucky enough to feel this exciting surge of strength." "So, you killed Christopher Turner in order to repay him for having an affair with your wife?" Robinson exclaimed. "But you were intimate with his wife every weekday. Isn't that enough for you?" He demanded an answer. The answer to both of your questions is a categorical no. In time, you will understand my true revenge, I assured him. What questions did you just answer no to? The baffled detective asked, setting up the recorder to play back his previous inquiries. So you're saying you didn't kill Christopher Turner? Or are you saying his death wasn't motivated by revenge? Robinson asked, listening to himself. I can answer yes to both of these questions, I replied. Damn it, Robinson muttered. I need to remember to ask one question at a time. At that moment, a uniformed officer entered the kitchen, holding a large pistol in his hands and waving it in front of Detective Robinson's astonished eyes. I found this in the gun safe in the basement. The officer gave me a stern look. Are you going to mark this as evidence and admit it? Great idea, Robinson replied enthusiastically. Be sure to submit your fingerprints to the laboratory. The owner of these fingerprints is either a cold-blooded killer or the biggest fool in the world, the officer muttered, blushing slightly as he walked out, clutching my magnum with one hand and donuts with the other. The filling has already started to ooze out of them. The detective chuckled as he noticed the strawberry filling dripping from Vanessa's nose onto the kitchen table next to a box of donuts. Turner was shot with a .44 caliber Magnum pistol. Do you have one, Mr. Yang? I remembered that one evening I saw a .44 Magnum at Douglas Lewis's. It got me thinking. As you know, jealous husbands can be both ruthless and deadly. That's when I realized that I needed a firearm as reliable as Douglas's, in case he decided to fight me in a fit of anger. Not all men are as understanding as I am, so I went and bought one. We have both a motive and a weapon, Robinson chuckled. Now we just need the right moment. I think you spent a quiet evening at home with your wife. In fact, I spent most of the night in Jill Lewis's bed, or rather in her marital bed. I left at 11:12 at night and went straight home. Vanessa was already asleep when I arrived. I'm not sure Jill will remember the time because she was in a state of heavy intoxication when I left, I added. It's very convenient. You remember the exact moment of your departure, but Mrs. Lewis was too engrossed to remember anything and your wife was asleep when you returned. I almost hesitate to ask, but how did you manage to remember the exact time when you left the Lewis house? Robinson asked. Her husband sent a message to my answering machine while I was having fun with his wife. He mentioned that he was on his way home from the airport, and it was 10:12 p.m. According to my calculations, the earliest he can come home will be around 11:12 p.m., so I tried to leave before that time. On my way home, I noticed his car driving through their neighborhood. If you left at 11:12 p.m., as you claim, then you had more than enough time to get to Turner's house and shoot him when he opened the door, the detective said with a pleased tone in his voice. I believe we have enough evidence to arrest you for murder, Mr. Yang. The moment he reached for the handcuffs, his cell phone rang. Robinson signaled one of the officers to follow him outside for a private conversation. He was gone for almost 10 minutes. From the look on his face when he returned, everything was clear. Damn it! Detective Harry just got a full confession out of Douglas Lewis. He stated that upon arriving home from the airport, he found his wife asleep, intoxicated and covered in various liquids. He was confused when he noticed a wallet on the floor next to her unconscious body. It belonged to Christopher Turner. He took his gun and went to Turner, making a hole in it big enough for a cat to crawl through. He initially denied everything, but eventually surrendered under interrogation by Harry. Do you know how Christopher Turner's wallet ended up on the floor of Lewis's bedroom? Asked Robinson. I answered quietly, I have no idea, Robinson. He often left it on the bedside table next to the bed. I caught a glimpse of her a couple of times when I was with his wife. I can't understand how he or someone else could have left it at the Lewis house by accident. Apparently, one of your wife's lovers is facing a long prison sentence for the murder of her other lover. And all this time you were with their wives much more often than they were with yours, even if there were two of them. Right now, your wife is here in a kind of daze, burying her head in a box of jelly donuts. The only thing I replied was that it was sweeter that way. When the detective and the police left my house, my wayward wife threw herself at my feet, begging for forgiveness. My revenge was sweet, but it wasn't enough for me. All this time I imagined how I would put her out on the street without the means to exist. I made us bankrupt in advance. All our savings were allegedly lost, but only I knew where they were. My revenge was completed when this cheater cried at the door and begged for forgiveness. But I was determined. Now we need to move on, but without her. My 26-year marriage has come to an end. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.